All right, you guys, let's go ahead and take a look at this here. This is actually lesson 5.14. And in this case, guys, we are going to be completing the square. When it comes to completing the square, we have to consider a few things. We have to make sure our equation is equal to 0 and it's in standard form. And from there, we want to go ahead and rewrite it into a vertex form. And in order to do that, we do need to do complete the square. In this case, guys, we do have the equation of an x squared minus 6 equals a 2 minus an 18x. Now, the first thing you want to go ahead and check here, guys, once again, first thing you want to go ahead and do is make your equation equal to 0. So make the equation here, you want to make it equal to 0. Now, in this case, guys, another thing you want to go ahead and check here is my x squared positive? And in this case, guys, it is actually a positive. So I'm basically moving everything that is not with my x squared to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and first add an 18x because that's the opposite, and we're going to go ahead and add it to both sides. And in this case, this 18x is not going to be adding to anything on the other side just because it doesn't have any like terms there. So it's going to be x squared plus an 18x minus 6 equals 2. Now, once again, we want to go ahead and make it equal to 0. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 2. And subtract 2. So in this case, that would become x squared plus an 18x minus 8 equal to a 0. All right. Now, from here, guys, we can now complete the square. So from this point, since my equation is equal to 0, I can complete the square. Now, in this case, guys, whenever you're completing the square, you actually only need the first two terms. So we're going to go ahead and do x squared plus an 18x plus some number, and that's actually the number we're trying to find, minus an 8. In this case, I did put it on the outside, minus that same number equal to 0. In this case, guys, once again, when you're completing the square, you only need your first two terms, so that's why I wrote those two in parentheses. I left our constant, in this case, negative 8 on the outside, and whatever we find in this case is going to be adding inside and subtracting on the outside. Now, this value here, guys, is actually c. In order for us to find c, we actually have to do b over 2, all of it squared. So we have to find our b value. B in this case, guys, once again, is going to be based off this expression here. So B in this case is 18. So we have C equals 18 divided by 2 and then squared. So 18 divided by 2 in this case, guys, is 9. And 9 squared is 81. So I'm going to go ahead and write an 81 here and subtract that on the outside. Now, in this case, guys, from here, we actually want to go ahead and rewrite our trinomial, which is this expression right here, as a binomial squared. In order to do that, we would be doing factoring. We would actually do factoring with the diamond method, but there's actually an easier way. Since this here is a perfect square trinomial, whenever I write these out, I basically need the square root of the first number and the last number. So square root of the first number in this case is x squared. That's just going to be x. And then square root of the 81 is 9. So then I should have a 9 here. And then the sign of our middle term is positive. So then I should have a positive there. So that's how we get that one. That's a perfect square trinomial. Or you could also see this as the number that's going to go inside our parentheses is actually the number you square to get your c value, and that's going to be all the time. Now, on the outside, I do have a negative 8 minus 81. The same signs in this case tell me to add and keep the sign. So I have a negative 89 equal to 0. Now, in this case, guys, I do want to go ahead and just pause a bit here. This here is known as vertex form. So if you want to go ahead and rewrite an equation from standard form to vertex form, we do have to complete the square. Now, since we're doing this on con, guys, whenever the equation here is equal to 0, it does prefer our constant to be on the opposite side. Our constant in this case, guys, is 89, negative 89. So I'm going to go ahead and actually add 89 to both sides. Add 89, and that's going to give us x plus 9 squared equals 89. And that would actually be my answer. All right, so that's the first one. Now, in this case, guys, they're actually going to be asking for two solutions here. First solution is to rewrite the equation, which we just did. That's our first solution. Our second solution in this case, guys, does require us to solve for x. So since we're going to go ahead and solve for x here, I am going to be using that formula there. So let's go ahead and write it down. I have x plus 9 squared equals 89. Now, thankfully for us, the constant is actually already on the other side, so I do want to go ahead and now get rid of that squared. In order for us to get rid of the squared, we have to do the opposite, and that is taking the square root on both sides. This cancels the squared and the square root, and we're left with x plus 9 equals a plus or minus square root of 89. Now, notice in this case, I did not turn that into a decimal since I want an exact answer. I'll go ahead and keep it as a square root. If it's perfect, I would be getting a whole number there. Now, goal is to solve for x, so in this case, I am going to be subtracting the 9. So let's go ahead and subtract 9 and subtract 9. So then x in this case, guys, equals a negative 9 plus or minus the square root of 89. And that there, guys, is our answer.